5 BYD vehicles are heading to Canada, and not a single one of them can legally be sold in the United States. One floats, one survives a tire blowout at highway speed without losing control, and the cheapest one costs less than a base model Tesla. But there is a reason most Canadians have never heard of them, and it has nothing to do with the cars themselves. There's a full-size SUV dropping into a lake, staying buoyant, and propelling itself forward through the water. There's a sedan that reaches highway speed in under 4 seconds, priced near what a mid-trim Camry costs in some markets. And there is a pickup truck with a combined range that stretches past what most Canadian drivers cover in a full week. All three come from the same manufacturer. None are currently available in the United States. Canada may see them first, but not because of geography. The reasons involve policy, certification pathways, and a market strategy that treats the Canadian border as something very different from the American one. Why Canada becomes the door that opens is one question. But the harder question, the one that keeps legacy automakers up at night, is what BYD has built into its business that Toyota, Ford, and even Tesla cannot replicate. Not next year, possibly not this decade. That answer comes later, and it changes the meaning of every vehicle covered here. BYD started as a battery manufacturer, not a car company that sources cells from a supplier, a battery company that eventually wrapped vehicles around its own chemistry. Over 3 decades, that foundation expanded into electric motors, power electronics, semiconductors, and vehicle platforms. What makes this relevant to Canada is not the corporate history. It is what that history produces, a cost structure that no competitor currently matches. But how deep that advantage goes, and whether it is a strength or a dependency, is a question that only sharpens as the lineup unfolds. For now, one detail matters. Most automakers buy their most expensive component. BYD makes it. What that means for pricing will become obvious with the first car. What it means for Canada's auto industry may take longer to surface. Canada's position in this picture is distinct from the United States. Different regulatory framework, different tariff schedule, different certification pathways, provincial incentive programs that vary by region, federal EV policy that has historically prioritized adoption targets over origin restrictions. That combination creates a corridor. Not guaranteed, but plausible. And if it opens, 5 vehicles show what walks through it. The question is whether Canadians should want them to. The BYD Seal is a fastback sedan with a silhouette that draws immediate comparison to the Porsche Taycan. Low roofline, wide stance, swept rear glass. It reaches 60 miles per hour in approximately 3.8 seconds. Rated range sits around 350 miles. In markets where it already sells, its price equivalent lands near 50,000 Canadian dollars. That puts it directly against the Tesla Model 3, except the Model 3, in most configurations, costs more. So how does a company most Canadians cannot name undercut the best-selling EV on the continent? Part of the answer involves the battery. BYD manufactures its own blade cells. No supplier margin, no third-party negotiation over cathode chemistry. But that alone does not explain a price gap this wide. There is something else in the cost structure, something that applies to every vehicle in this lineup, and it will not be fully clear until the last car on this list. For now, the Seal raises a different problem. A low sticker price is meaningless if the car cannot be insured affordably, serviced within a reasonable distance, or resold without losing half its value in 2 years. Canadian buyers who purchased early EVs from smaller brands know exactly how that plays out. Would BYD's entry be different? That depends on something the company has not yet proven in this market: trust. Warranty structures, dealer partnerships, and parts logistics would need to exist before the first Seal rolls off a Canadian lot. Some of that infrastructure is reportedly being planned. Whether it arrives before the cars do is an open question. That leaves a gap one segment below, the price range where most Canadian households actually shop. The BYD Dolphin fills it, around 30,000 Canadian dollars, estimated range near 260 miles, positioned against the Chevrolet Equinox EV and the base Model 3. On paper, the range looks modest, but here is where Canadian driving patterns matter. 260 miles covers the daily reality of the vast majority of commuters, even after cold weather degradation shaves off the top. What sets the Dolphin apart is not the range number. It is vehicle-to-load capability. V2L turns the car into a mobile power source, running tools at a remote job site, powering a campsite deep in the backcountry, keeping a refrigerator and space heater alive during a 3-day ice storm blackout. In a country where winter outages strand entire towns, that is not a feature. It is a backup generator on wheels. But does a compact EV at this price survive a Canadian winter mechanically? Not just in range, but in build quality, heating efficiency, and resistance to road salt corrosion over 5 or 6 seasons. BYD's thermal management systems are designed for wide temperature swings in principle. Long-term data from a Canadian climate does not yet exist, and that gap between engineering spec and real-world proof is exactly where early adopters take on risk. If BYD gets the thermal performance right, the Dolphin becomes the most practical entry-level EV in Canada. If it does not, the warranty language becomes the most important page in the brochure. That creates a constraint the next vehicle is designed to sidestep entirely. The BYD Shark is a plug-in hybrid pickup truck, a category that barely exists. In a segment owned by the Ford Ranger and Toyota Tacoma, the Shark arrives with 430 horsepower, a combined electric and gasoline range estimated near 500 miles, and an advanced multi-link suspension built for mixed terrain. The hybrid architecture is the critical detail, and it targets a specific Canadian anxiety. For drivers who haul gear to a lake house in July and commute through unplowed roads in January, the gasoline engine removes range anxiety while the electric drivetrain handles daily driving. The Ranger and Tacoma have earned loyalty over decades of proven durability and accessible service networks. The Shark has neither. So why would anyone take the risk? Because neither the Ranger nor the Tacoma offers this powertrain combination at this power level at any price. That gap is what forces the conversation into territory the truck market has not faced before. What happens when the new entrant is not trying to match the incumbents, but offering something they physically do not sell? The catch is infrastructure. A truck that Canadian buyers depend on in remote, harsh conditions needs parts availability within days, not weeks. It needs trained technicians outside of Toronto and Vancouver. It needs insurance companies willing to underwrite it without a surcharge that erases the price advantage. All of those are solvable, but none of them are solved yet. That forces a trade-off between proven reliability and raw technological reach, and no vehicle in this lineup sharpens it more than the Yangwang U8. Yangwang is BYD's premium sub-brand. The U8 is a performance sedan carrying approximately 1,300 horsepower across its electric motors. But the horsepower is not the story. The suspension is. The U8 uses an electromagnetic active system that adjusts each wheel independently, in real time, dozens of times per second. In controlled demonstrations, the vehicle has maintained stable, steerable control even after a complete tire failure at speed, the system compensating dynamically before the driver fully registers the blowout. No current production sedan from Mercedes, BMW, or Tesla offers an equivalent capability. That raises an uncomfortable question for regulators. If a vehicle can demonstrate a safety function that exceeds what any approved competitor provides, but the software behind it was developed in China and processes data through systems that Canadian authorities have not fully audited, does it get certified or does it get blocked? This is not hypothetical. Canadian regulators have been cautious with advanced driver assistance claims, and the U8 system pushes directly into that friction zone. What data the car collects, where it is stored, who can access it, and under what legal framework. Those are active discussions in Ottawa, and the outcome does not just affect one sedan. It sets the precedent for every connected Chinese vehicle that follows it. That changes what matters entirely, because the Yangwang U8 is not designed to compete inside existing categories. It is designed to make them feel incomplete. The U8 is a full-size SUV producing approximately 1,180 horsepower. It executes a tank turn, rotating in place on its own axis, using independent motor control at each wheel. And then there is the capability that no press release buries and no competitor has answered. The U8 floats. The body displaces enough volume. The underbody is sealed. The wheels generate limited propulsion while the vehicle sits on water. The scenario is not theatrical. A vehicle enters a body of water by accident or by intent, and instead of sinking, it stays buoyant and maneuverable. Compared to the Mercedes G-Wagon or Range Rover, which define the ultra-premium off-road class, the U8 matches or exceeds virtually every measurable capability while adding functions neither one offers. Its price in international markets sits below a loaded G-Wagon. In a country with more freshwater coastline than any nation on Earth, a vehicle that treats water as passable surface rather than terminal hazard is not a party trick. It is a capability gap that Mercedes and Land Rover currently have no public answer for. But here is where the tension peaks. A vehicle this advanced, at this price, from a manufacturer this vertically integrated, should already be on sale in North America. The fact that it is not, and that it may arrive in Canada before it arrives in the United States, is the story beneath the story. Now the largest open question lands. Why might Canada see these vehicles while the United States does not? The US has imposed steep tariffs on Chinese-manufactured EVs, steep enough to function as a near-total price wall. Political pressure in Washington frames Chinese EV imports as a national security risk, supply chain dependency, data sovereignty, strategic competition. Canada has echoed some of those concerns publicly, but it has not mirrored the tariff structure in full. Canadian vehicle homologation standards are rigorous, but the certification pathway is technically navigable for a manufacturer with the resources and the intent. BYD has signaled interest in markets adjacent to the US, Canada, Mexico, parts of Southeast Asia, as staging grounds where brand credibility gets built without the political cost of a direct American launch. For Canadian consumers, that creates something unusual: access to vehicles that American buyers cannot purchase, at prices compressed by a cost structure no legacy automaker currently matches. But access comes with exposure, limited service networks, uncertain resale values, insurance premiums that reflect unfamiliarity, and the political risk that trade policy shifts could restrict access retroactively, turning early adopters into stranded owners. Those risks are real. So is the competitive pressure. When a new entrant forces Toyota to revisit pricing and Ford to accelerate electrification timelines, Canadian buyers benefit whether they ever purchase a BYD or not. The question is whether the price of that pressure, in jobs, in data exposure, in supply chain dependency, is one Canada is willing to pay. The global auto industry has been shaped for a century by three centers of gravity: the United States, Germany, and Japan. That hierarchy is not collapsing, but it is being contested by a manufacturer whose advantage is not a single technology or a single model. It is the stack. BYD controls batteries, motors, power electronics, semiconductors, and software, from raw material processing to finished vehicle. Building a battery gigafactory is a capital problem any large automaker can solve with enough investment. Building a fully vertically integrated supply chain, one where the cost of every major component is internalized and optimized without third-party margin, is a transformation that takes a decade. And most legacy manufacturers are only partway through it. That is the structural advantage hinted at from the beginning. It is not a single patent. It is not a breakthrough chemistry. It is the compounding effect of controlling every layer, year after year. while competitors are still assembling theirs from separate suppliers. Canada sits at the edge of that shift, potentially among the first Western markets to absorb its full effects. The question that remains has no clean answer. What matters more for this country? Lower prices and faster access to technology that is already here, or tighter control over where the supply chain lives, where the data flows, and what that access costs when the rules change? That choice is coming faster than most people think, and one country just north of the world's largest auto market may be forced to make it first, with consequences that reach far beyond cars.